Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense.
Welcome to the FCS Kickoff Show. I'm David Hassagen. He is the czar of the playbook, Emery Hunt. With the last week of the FCS season upon us before Selection Sunday, 6 tickets have officially been punched and several at-large bids are locked up as well. But now the question is, whose bubble will hold up to the pressure and whose will burst on the final week of the season? So let's talk 4 bubble teams that might be left behind their fingernails on Sunday afternoon. Emery, why don't you go first?
I like Southern Illinois. I know that's a big question mark about the Salukis and who they have beaten in the last couple of games, but the fact is you play who's on the schedule and you win those games. So they put themselves in the conversation. They have 7 wins, and if they're going to get a big one this week against North Dakota State, obviously they're a lock in, but maybe that's not likely to happen. But you look at the fact that they have an FBS win, they have finished strong in the season, so in the eyes of my committee, they look like a team that's playing their best football late. It just so happens that they get North Dakota State to close out the season. But I think the Salukis have put enough on paper to where they're on the bubble. I think their bubble is a little bit more firm than others. So I would make a case for Southern Illinois.
See, I would say Albany, though. You talk about strength of schedule. Coming out of the CAA this year, Albany has exceeded expectations. They have a great redshirt freshman quarterback in Undercuffler who's been outstanding. He can make all the throws. The only thing that will complicate things is that loss to Maine for Albany. If Maine beats New Hampshire this week, that's the only question I have. For me, I think they're in, but in terms of the committee, if Maine wins against New Hampshire, Albany might be in trouble in terms of their thoughts on the matter. But for me, Albany is very good on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, they looked very good last week. I think the Great Danes might be a lock.
A lot of people look at conferences and say, like, okay, well, this year you're going to get 5 from this conference, 4 from this conference, 7 from here. The Ivy's going to join the playoffs. All these scenarios, right? But I think you look at the OVC this year and how great they've been playing. Southeast Missouri State and Austin Peay, I think, are locks. And I think they're going to be in. So I'm going to make a case for UT Martin. I think the Skyhawks have played competitive football, even in their losses. It's a very good football team. And we've seen how the round robin has happened this year in the OVC with Jacksonville State, Eastern Kentucky. Remember earlier in the year we were talking a lot about Tennessee Tech. And could this be the year that they join the party and get into that conversation? But UT Martin, to be honest, has been one of the more consistent teams in the conference. And I do think this is a 3-team bid, with the 3rd team being the Skyhawks. So don't just look at the top 2 in this conference with Austin Peay and also Southeast Missouri State. I think the Skyhawks deserve to be in the playoffs, and I think they could get one of those at-large bids.
I'm going to go back to your case for Southern Illinois, though, and talk about the Citadel. Very similar resume in a conference that's been wide open. The SoCon has been a dogfight this year. We know Wofford has earned the automatic bid. Furman looks strong. I think they are a lock. Citadel has a win over a Power 5 team in Georgia Tech. They've got a big win over Furman on the road. The problem with the Citadel is that their committee's going to look at is they've kind of been a Jekyll and Hyde team. They got a loss to VMI, who of course was much better this year. They got a loss to Samford, who was better than we thought they might be, although still middle of the road average. The Citadel, I think, needs to win this last game. The game last week against the Mocs was a tough one. I still think, though, coming out of a stronger conference in the SoCon, plus a Power 5 win, might be enough for the Citadel to claim one of the last spots in the playoff. And if they do get in, they're going to be a tough out.
That's going to be an interesting case because they're coming off that loss to Chattanooga.
Right.
And that's a bad loss because they had an opportunity to win the game. They had control in that game and lost the lead. But that Georgia Tech win looks a lot better than Southern Illinois' win versus their FBS opponent. But that loss to Chattanooga is really damning, I think, for the Citadel.
But remember, their last game is against Wofford coming up this week. So if they
win that one,
they have wins over Wofford and Furman. So you got the top 2 teams in the conference with wins. That might be enough to get them over the hump. Now here's another reason why you should choose the FCS.
I think the FCS gives a student athlete a chance to really develop in the classroom and on the field. and I don't think there's anything that gets in the way of the development of the student athlete. Whereas in sometimes other conferences, other levels of play, I think there's some things that could sway a student athlete in a wrong direction here or there. But I think at the FCS level, I think it's all about the student athlete. I think it's all about his development in the classroom and also on the playing field. And it really it keeps your values and your goals right in front of you. And I think there's less things that are going to take you away from those things.
I'm Ike Abuchalam, and this is your football game plan Big Sky Conference whip around. It's coming down to the wire in college football. With 2 weeks left in the season, conference standings are just about finalized across the FBS, and the playoff picture is beginning to take shape. In the Big Sky, the fight for the conference title is still yet to be decided. Montana State has been one of the best teams in the conference all season. Ranked number 8 by Stats FCS, the Bobcats have achieved a record of 5-2 in the Big Sky and 8-3 overall. Now riding a 3-game win streak with their latest victory over UC Davis, Montana now has their toughest game of the season this Saturday versus 3rd-ranked Montana. Offense has been the Bobcats' calling card, scoring 32.5 points per game, good for 29th in the FCS, and 4,743 total yards, good for 20th. Where the strength of the team really lies is in the backfield. With 2,859 yards rushing on the season so far, the 8th-ranked run game punishes opponents and keeps the Bobcats in control of nearly every game they've played. A true committee backfield, the Bobcats have 5 running backs that have over 300 yards. Senior Logan Jones leads the way with 667 yards on 97 carries. Senior offensive weapon Travis Johnson is second with 432 yards on 64 carries. Redshirt freshman Lane Sumner, sophomore Isaiah Infante, and junior Troy Anderson all have about 350 yards. With plenty of contributions from other players, the vaunted run game averages 260 yards per game. This kind of ball control offensively allows the Bobcats to dictate the pace of games this season. In both losses to FCS opponents, Montana State was held significantly below their average. If they're going to knock Montana off their perch atop the Big Sky this weekend, the ball carriers will need to have a heck of a day. The 119th edition of the Battle of the Wild is shaping up to be a heck of a game. Get ready. This has been your Big Sky Conference Whip Around. I'm Ike Abuchalam.
The Kennesaw State Owls are 9-2 on the season, ranked 16th in the country, and on paper, those two numbers or those two statistics should tell you that, hey, this team is a playoff lock. But things are not that easy right now in the FCS playoff standings or rankings when you look at the schedule that the Kennesaw Owls have played so far this year. Point University and Reinhardt are 2 non-Division I games that they have victories in. But with that being said, that if you take those 2 games away, they are still at the 7 D1 win mark. They have an impressive loss. I know that's an oxymoron, but an impressive loss in overtime to Kent State. And I think when you look at this team, top to bottom, still being able to go out there and dominate from week to week, it should put them in the playoffs despite not winning the Big South title. I do believe the Big South will get 2 teams in this year, Kennesaw State, but it makes this matchup against Gardner-Webb very intriguing. They're going to have to go out there and beat Gardner-Webb soundly on the scoreboard to make it even better impression to the playoff committee in hopes that they can get in to the tournament. But I think right now, even if you take away the games versus Point and Reinhardt, Kennesaw State has enough on the table
and enough pedigree and with their play on the field to warrant the postseason.
UC Davis's playoff hopes are now dead, but now the question is, will Sacramento State earn a top 8 seed? We'll get that decision when they play each other here in the final week.
You sure you're off the UC Davis bandwagon?
I am off the UC Davis bandwagon. They were good at the beginning of the year. They had a couple tough losses. They fought back. Not so much. They're not getting it.
And here's why I think Sacramento State gets this ball game. You talk about the defense of Sacramento State. They're doing a great job in swarming to the football, pun intended. Offensively speaking, they're scoring at a high clip. So I do like Sacramento State to win. This is a tough year for UC Davis. Magical season last year. Jake Meyer is one of the better quarterbacks in the subdivision, but just didn't have the offensive pieces that we saw from them last year. And that tends to happen when you lose an NFL receiver in Keelan Doss. So I like Sacramento State's defense. I think they get the win.
Meanwhile, in the Big South, Monmouth has already got their playoff ticket punched. They are the champions of the Big South, but now it's about momentum. They will look to make quick work out of Hampton. The biggest thing is coming out healthy.
Yeah, I'm going to be the broadcaster on that football game, the ESPN3 broadcast. So that's at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Check your cable provider for channel listings. That will, again, ESPN3, and watch the ESPN app. So I can't pick this game, but I will be interested in watching the two quarterbacks. I'm a big fan of DeAndre Francois and what he has done this year for Hampton. He has to cut down on the turnovers, but he's playing some good football. And Kenji Bahar, you can't say enough great things about him and what he does at the position and how he has turned it on this season, closing out his career as amongst the all-time leaders in many categories in that Monmouth offense.
But Pete Guerrero has been the underrated core of this offense for Monmouth. He might be one of the best running backs, period, in Division I. It's going to be huge for them. You can't pick the game. I will. I think Monmouth wins this game handily. I think they learned some lessons from the North Alabama game. They closed against Campbell last week. I don't think they have a problem against Hampton.
Let's take a look into the playoff bubble inside of the CAA. New Hampshire, Richmond, and Stony Brook all saw their slim hopes of making the playoffs disappear with losses last week. They joined Elon, Delaware, William & Mary, and Rhode Island as eliminated teams. Now the teams who are still alive in playoff contention. The conference set a record last year after sending 6 teams to the playoffs. This year, they already most likely have 4 teams in with a realistic chance to send a 5th team. Let's start off with James Madison. After their blowout win over Richmond, the Dukes clinched the conference and reserved their spot in the playoffs. Villanova has an 8-3 record. Towson and Albany are both 7-4. All 3 teams look like they will make their way into the playoffs. They all play division rivals this week who themselves are eliminated but would like to play spoiler. With that being said, I believe it would take a blowout, not just a loss, to eliminate these 3 teams. The 5th and final team trying to fight their way into the playoffs is last year's conference champions, Maine. The Black Bears started the season off 2-5 and have won 4 straight to a 6-5 record. They will look to win again this week against New Hampshire. A win most likely gets them into the playoffs. A key factor into Maine's chances, 2 of their losses are to FBS opponents. Will the CAA send the most teams to the playoffs once again? For the FCS Whip Around, I'm Dylan Cieslik.
Well, it happened. Wait, that's not how this goes. How's this going out there? I'm Zachary Morgan here with your Ivy League Whip Around, and it seems as though the victory party hangover hit Dartmouth pretty hard as they were upset by Cornell 20-17. Now, the Ivy League title the Big Green seemed to have secured is up for grabs as we head into the final week of play for the conference. And on top of that, Yale is coming off a game where they demolished Princeton 51-14 with quarterback Kurt Rawlings throwing for 6 touchdown passes on the day. The win promoted the Elis to a tie for the top spot in the standings with Dartmouth, and now heading into the final week of the season for the conference, all eyes are going to be on one game this weekend. The game. Harvard-Yale. This will be the 136th meeting in the third oldest rivalry in all of Division I football, and given the strength of the Bulldog passing attack and the questionable, at best, Harvard pass defense, the Eli's can just follow their offensive game plan from last week and expect similar, if not better, results as they compete for their share of the Ivy League title. And barring an upset from either Harvard or Brown, we can expect Dartmouth and Yale to end up splitting the league title this year. With Football Game Plan, I'm Zachary Morgan, and I will see you next time.
We talked about it in the opening. Albany very much on the bubble for a playoff spot. Now they have to go on to a very tough opponent, and that is Stony Brook. Stony Brook has been around the top 25 all year. They've fallen off. They're not going to make it, but they can definitely spoil the party for somebody who's looking to.
Absolutely, but these two teams mirror one another. Talk about point of attack play, O-line, D-line, special teams. This is where they both excel. The issue is that Stony Brook's offense, I think, can be inconsistent at times, especially when you're talking about them playing balance on offense. Sometimes the passing game is there, but the run game isn't. Sometimes the run game is there, but the passing game has taken a day off. They have to be consistent if they want to win this ball game. I just like Albany's consistency more so than Stony Brook, so I think they get the win.
Another team coming out of the CAA will be Villanova. They look like they're gaining momentum. Some people, though, still don't have them as a lock. They kind of have to win this game against Delaware to make sure.
Well, remember Delaware was the talk of the town earlier in the year,
right.
And it's funny how the season has these ebbs and flows throughout. Teams we talk about at the beginning, we don't talk about at the end. They have the opportunity to play spoiler, but I think with 8 wins, Villanova should be a lock.
Right.
I think they do a great job of closing out their season. They'll get the win against the Blue Hens.
Meanwhile, the independent game that most people are going to be watching is North Dakota. They face a must-win situation. They did win last week against Northern Colorado, but weren't convincing. They now have to win big against a pesky Southern Utah team.
They may be another team that's on the bubble in North Dakota, and I know we joke with you guys about North Dakota and UC Davis, but North Dakota still, I think, is firmly on the bubble. Ketteringham is a great quarterback, does a great job throwing the football. Southern Utah usually has stout point of attack play, especially on defense. They are usually one that could apply pressure. It's been a down year for the Thunderbirds. I like North Dakota to get the win.
Meanwhile, there is very few more historic games in college football than Harvard versus Yale, but this time the Crimson can play spoiler in what is a huge game. Yale can win a share of the Ivy League title with a win and potentially take it on their own if Dartmouth loses to Brown. Huge game between Harvard and Yale this time around.
Normally you say there's no way Dartmouth would lose to Brown, but they lost to Cornell last weekend. And Cornell's and Brown's offense is outstanding. They can score, so that's going to be a problem for Dartmouth. In this ball game, Yale's defense has been the more consistent out of the two, Harvard and Yale. Offensively, Kurt Rawlins is coming off 6 touchdown passes last weekend. Zane Dudek is one of the best running backs in the conference. So, yes, Yale has all of the pieces to get the win. I think they will beat Harvard. And judging on what happens in the game against Brown, I think they could easily say, you could say Yale could be the lone Ivy League champ.
This week is always a special one in the HBCU community as the 2020 class of the Black College Hall of Fame is announced. And this year, all of the 6 nominees selected, 3 of them have ties to the MEAC: Dr. Dennis E. Thomas, Earl Harvey, and Joe Taylor. Dr. Thomas was a standout player at Alcorn State, but since then has become a leader and a pioneer for HBCU football. After serving as a member of the NCAA Division I Leadership Council and Governance Committees, he would then go on to become the Director of Athletics at Hampton University for 12 years while developing the Athletic Academic Support Unit. Dr. Thomas then became the Commissioner of the MEAC Conference earlier this year. Along with his leadership in the conference, Dr. Thomas also had a critical role in the development of the Celebration Bowl, which this year will enter its 5th season. Earl Ant Harvey was a trendsetter at NC Central from the very first moment he stepped on campus. He was the first freshman in NCAA history to record a 3,000-yard passing season, as well as compiling 10,621 yards passing and 86 total touchdowns over his career. Harvey's name still looms large in the record books to this day at NC Central and in CIAA history. And the final honoree is legendary coach Joe Taylor. After graduating from Western Illinois in 1972, Coach Taylor held several assistant coaching positions before finally being named the head coach of Howard in 1983. After just 1 year, he became the head coach at Virginia Union, where he stayed until 1991, winning the CIAA title in 1986. From 1992 to 2007, Taylor became the head coach at Hampton, where he became a legend, winning 3 CIAA titles, 5 MEAC titles, and 4 Black College National Championships, including a three-peat from 2004 to 2006. He finished his career at FAMU, where he won the MEAC title in 2010 before retiring in 2012 with a career record of 232 wins, 97 losses, and 4 ties. A huge congratulations to all of this year's inductees, who are all thoroughly deserving. For the FCS Conference Whip Around, I'm David Hassagen.
Welcome to Week 13. As we wrap up the regular season this week, let's give a big congratulations to the Bison of North Dakota State as they won their 9th straight Missouri Valley Conference title. After losing the longtime head coach Chris Kleiman and the all-time wins leader in FCS history, quarterback Easton Stick, most people thought the Bison dynasty would come to an end. Boy, were they wrong. And in most part, it's been due to their unbelievable play of their redshirt freshman quarterback, Trey Lance. Lance, who is the first freshman quarterback to ever start a season opener for the Bison, burst into the scene week 1 with his 6 TD performance and has never looked back. Through the first 11 games this season, he has thrown for over 2,000 yards and 23 touchdowns with an unbelievable 0 interceptions. He leads the league in completion percentage at 70.4, and most impressively, leads the FCS with a passer efficiency of 196.6, which not only set but destroyed the league record of 172.4 set by his predecessor, Easton Stick. As great as these stats have been, what is even more impressive is how he has achieved them. Lance has had to endure the ultimate baptism by fire as the Bison this season played a ranked opponent 5 out of 6 weeks, including 4 straight games, and in that stretch were 2 top 5 teams. Lance responded by shredding apart every team's defense while managing not to turn the ball over. His play has been so impressive this year that not only is he the front runner now for the Jerry Rice Award, which is given to the FCS top freshman, but is also nominated for the Walter Payton Award, which is given to the best offensive player in the FCS. The Bison should be in good hands with Lance for years to come. And remember, the last 2 quarterbacks in Bison history, Carson Wentz and Easton Stick, are now playing in the NFL. Could Lance make it 3 in a row? Only time will tell, but he sure is off to an amazing start. For the Missouri Valley Conference, I'm Brian Sullivan.
The Florida Classic will be a huge one this time around. FAMU looks to send a message despite not going to the postseason, taking on Bethune-Cookman. BC really has nothing left to play for, but it's still a massive rivalry game for Pride.
Yeah, and you look at how this ended last year for Bethune-Cookman, for FAMU. They got the loss in this ball game against Bethune-Cookman, which ended their bid for the Celebration Bowl. So you're going to look for FAMU to come into this ball game trying to get some revenge against the Wildcats. Their offense is phenomenal. Defensively, I'm a big fan of Terry Jefferson, the outstanding nickelback that does a great job in playing the football. I think FAMU gets revenge, gets the win, and pushes their record to 10-1.
Ryan Stanley looking to write a few more records before he's done at FAMU. We now move on to another big game, though, in the MEAC, and that is South Carolina State taking on Norfolk. SC State needs a win and some help, but they just have to take care of business against Norfolk, and they might slip into the Celebration Bowl if A&T loses in the Aggie Eagle Classic.
Definitely a possibility, and you look at how South Carolina State has gone about their business this year. Great defense notwithstanding, but their offense has found the passing game, and they can do a great job of now beating you on the ground and through the air. It's going to be about protection in this ball game. Nigel Chavis is one of the best pass rushers in the MEAC. Can they keep him out of the backfield is going to be the key. I think they do a great job in stonewalling that pass rush coming from Norfolk State. They'll knock out the Spartans.
We move now to the Valley, the Missouri Valley. South Dakota State looking for a top 4 seed. They lost a couple weeks ago. They had to come back, and they did. But they might have to crush South Dakota to do it. Oh, please don't let us beat our rivals by about 50 points.
You know, that's always in play. They always love to beat their rival. And it's a big game, man. Austin Simmons is an underrated quarterback in the FCS. Does a great job for South Dakota, so he'll be game. But that Jackrabbits defense is playing really good football. They've overcome some injuries this season. The Jackrabbits have done a great job in, finding guys that have success, without their starters being there. So I do like South Dakota State to win this game.
And a real quick pick here, Southern Illinois at home hosting the Bison. Any chance the Salukis pull off the shock?
Although I would love to see chaos in the last weekend of the FCS, I just find it hard to find Southern Illinois, hosting not only North Dakota State, but trying to get that win. I don't think it'll happen. I like the Bison to win big.
The NEC kept it exciting throughout the season, but it is now official. Central Connecticut State is going to the FCS playoffs by clinching the NEC automatic qualifying bid. The game plan was the same against the Colonials as it was all season. Let Winchester work his magic. The senior quarterback rushed for 4 touchdowns and threw for another one as the Blue Devils won their 7th straight and reached 10 wins for the first time in school history. The previous record of 9 wins had been accomplished in 1973 and 2009. The Colonials, who had previously won 5 straight, kept it competitive throughout the first half, but couldn't keep up throughout the rest of the game and ultimately fell 49-28. Duquesne, who was expected to make it competitive throughout the last week of the season, ended up dropping 2 straight to NEC competition. The Blue Devils should prove to be a tough competition for playoff opponents as they have a lethal running game that dropped 389 yards on the ground against Robert Morris. Winchester could also beat teams through the air. But don't sleep on the Blue Devils defense, who have 18 interceptions on the season with 1 still to go. They had 3 against the Colonials as well and recovered a fumble. It will be interesting to see if they can keep it up against playoff competition. With the FCS Whip Around, this is Scott Glennon.
With 1 week to play, Austin Peay and Southeast Missouri are tied for first place in the OVC. Austin Peay holds the tiebreaker over Southeast Missouri and would earn the automatic bid to the FCS playoffs if both teams win. If both teams finish tied, they would be considered co-champions. Austin Peay has won only 1 OVC championship in 1977 and has never appeared in the playoffs. If Austin Peay loses and SEMO wins, the Red Hawks would lock up its 2nd straight and 3rd overall FCS playoff berth and win its 2nd OVC title, with 2010 being the other. The field for the 2019 NCAA Division I Football Championship will be announced on Sunday, November 24th at 11:30 a.m. Central Time on ESPNU. Austin Peay and UT Martin will at least share this year's Sergeant York title, and TSU could make it a 3-way tie with a win over Tennessee Tech on Saturday. But no matter what happens, Austin Peay will keep the physical trophy this year. OVC play concludes with 4 conference games this weekend, while UT Martin plays at FBS foe Kentucky. With 3 teams from the OVC currently ranking, it'll continue to be an exciting end to the OVC. Jennifer Matiwaika here, and I'll be seeing you around.
The NEC is one of the 6 tickets that has been punched. Central Connecticut State, they are already clinched. They're going to the playoffs, but they have 1 more game to play, and that's against Duquesne. A pride game for Duquesne, who lost any chance they had of going to the playoffs with the loss to Bryant last week.
Yeah, and they lost a big one to Robert Morris. I thought that really started the snowball effect for the Dukes. In this game, like you said, they're playing for pride. They're playing to play spoiler a little bit. Maybe they end their season on a high note. I don't think it'll happen. Central Connecticut State is playing for a seed, so they still have an opportunity to play for something in this ball game. I like the Blue Devils.
Meanwhile, in the OVC, two more teams looking for pride. That should be an entertaining ball game under the radar. Eastern Kentucky taking on Jacksonville State. We know Jacksonville State can put up points. What can the Colonels do on defense?
Well, it's going to be up to Aaron Patrick, the outstanding pass rusher, to apply pressure, to get pressure on that quarterback, to throw their passing game off their timing. But I don't think it'll happen. The Gamecocks, to me, will finish strong. Disappointing year for them, but they'll finish with a win.
Hello, Patriot League fans. I'm Scott Churchson. Ladies and gentlemen, I said this last week, starting to think I'm cursing the top-seeded team here. Just to recap, 3 weeks ago, I said Lehigh had a chance to put a stranglehold on the division if they won. They lost. 2 weeks ago, I said Holy Cross had a chance to put a stranglehold on the division if they won. They lost. And last week, I said Lafayette had a chance to put a stranglehold on the division if they won, and guess what? They got shut out at home to Colgate 16-zip. Let's see now if I can simultaneously curse both Holy Cross and Lafayette as I talk about them both this week. So now we're down to the final week of the regular season. Dominic Hosier continues to run well against teams in the division as he racked up another 156 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Crusaders last week against Fordham. In 5 games in the division this year, he has averaged 130 yards a game. His only sub-100-yard day came with a 50-yard game in the loss 2 weeks ago, so the Crusaders will need him to put up strong numbers if they want to win this week at home against Georgetown. For them to win the division, it's pretty simple. They win, they're in. Now, should they lose, then Lafayette still has a shot at the division. Should Holy Cross lose and the Leopards win in the rivalry game in Lehigh this weekend, then Lafayette will in fact win the division despite an overall record of 4-8. So, let's talk the rivalry game. First of all, Lehigh-Lafayette is the most played college football rivalry in the country, with now 135 years of football history and 150 years of sports history between them. Quick fun fact, the first ever game between them was in fact a baseball game in 1869 that ended in a tie. Both teams scored 45 runs. Anyway, back on topic, Lafayette holds the overall record at 78, 71, and 5, while Lehigh has won the last 4 and 9 out of the last 11. For Lehigh, it's playing in front of the home crowd and ending the season with a win. For Lafayette, it's playing for your playoff lives, so both teams have a lot riding on this. Secondly, yours truly will in fact be there representing football game plan. Holy Cross Georgetown starts at noon. Lafayette Lehigh starts a half an hour later, so you can bet the Leopards will be watching that scoreboard as well as the field. This season has straight up flown. I'm honored and privileged to do this. I cannot believe that we're at the end of the regular season already. But for Patriot League FCS Whip Around, I'm Scott Churchson, and as always, stay awesome.
I'm Alex Marinoni with your Week 13 Pioneer League Whip Around. In Week 12, we saw San Diego solidify its dominance over the conference with their 36th consecutive conference victory and their 6th consecutive conference championship. This championship puts them up to 11 total conference championships, just one behind Dayton's lead of 12. Dayton was in control of the conference since its debut in 1993, winning 8 of the first 9. But since then, it has been all San Diego, as they've won all 11 of their titles post-2005. San Diego's record-breaking domination has not been the only record-setting performances to note, though. After 2 more touchdowns in Week 12, Davidson running back Wesley Duggar can now call himself the single-season rushing touchdown king, as he has surpassed San Diego's Jonah Hodges' 18 set in 2016. Already with 20 touchdowns, Duggar will have 1 more week to add to this record. Duggar also needs just 31 yards in his final game against Drake to reach the 1,000-yard mark for the season. Another record that could be shattered this week will come in the hands of Dayton tight end Adam Troutman. Troutman, as mentioned last week, has had a stellar career at Dayton, one that may very well lead him to the NFL. But with 1 more college game left, well, 2 if you include the Senior Bowl, Troutman needs just 2 receptions to tie and 3 receptions to become Dayton's single-season leader. The record was held by Justin Melio in 2008, with a total of 67 receptions. After he breaks that, Troutman will need to do some heavy lifting for his next possible milestone. Sitting at 859 receiving yards, he will need a 141-yard day to crack the 1,000 for the season. For some other milestones that could be reached in the final week, a number of them come from the running game. Troutman's teammate, Jake Chisholm, is just 37 rushing yards away from 1,000 and 2 touchdowns away from 10. Stetson freshman running back Jalen Leary currently sits at 916 rushing yards, just 84 rushing yards shy of 1,000. The last running back at a chance for 1,000 is Morehead State's Isaiah Aguero, who currently sits at 835. 165 yards is a lot to ask for in 1 week, especially up against a Stetson rush defense that sits third in the conference. Realistically, 65 yards to get to 900 would be the focus here. San Diego quarterback Reed Sinnett has already surpassed 3,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, with 32 to be exact. But Dayton quarterback Jack Cook has narrowed that gap over the season with 29 right now. Just one shy of 30 and 76 yards away from 2,500 would culminate a successful year for Cook. Morehead State quarterback Mark Pappas sits 1 touchdown shy of 20 and 173 yards shy of 2,500 as well. Drake freshman Ian Corwin needs just 45 yards and 2 touchdowns to reach 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, and Stetson senior Gavin DiFilippo needs just 185 yards and 3 touchdowns to also reach that 2,000 yard and 20 touchdown plateau. Senior wide receiver Michael Bandy has already surpassed 1,000 receiving yards and sits second behind Troutman with 12 total touchdowns. However, Bandy does have the 2 reception lead on Troutman with 67 total. It could be a photo finish down to the final play of the season. On the defensive side of things, there aren't any record-breaking possibilities, but 3 players could reach a very special milestone, the 100 tackle season. Valparaiso's Jamari Booker is just 5 tackles away from 100. Butler's Luke Sinnett and Mason Brunner both sit at 89 and 88 apiece, respectively. 2 players on the same team needing double-digit tackles in the same game will be tough, but they have done it before. Having 2 players on the same defense eclipses 100 tackles would be an incredible milestone for the Butler defense. For the Pioneer League, I'm Alex Marinoni.
Emory, the Patriot League is out of control. There is still a wide open field with 2 huge games left in this conference. Let's start with the oldest rivalry in college football, Lafayette, Lehigh. Both of these teams need to win and get some help. Lafayette, though, very much in the driver's seat in terms of the playoff scenarios.
Lafayette has the defense, Lehigh has the offense, and I think it's going to be a great game, fun to watch. Oldest rivalry in college football. I like the Mountain Hawks to get the win. I think in this situation, normally I'm going defense over offense. I will trust offense over defense because I don't trust Lafayette's offense to move the football against Lehigh.
Speaking of defense, Georgetown's defense has been solid all year. Now they get a real test against Holy Cross. Georgetown's still looking for that 6th win. Holy Cross with a win, they go to the playoffs.
Yeah, so now there's something on the line. Last year I was on the broadcast for this game. Holy Cross was up 31-5 with 10 minutes left in the 4th quarter. Holy Cross was down 31-5 with 10 minutes left. Came back and won that football game 32-31. I think Georgetown will try to get revenge in this ball game, but I just don't trust their offense enough. I like Holy Cross.
Meanwhile, in the Pioneer League, San Diego is already going to the postseason once again out of the conference. But the most entertaining game, perhaps of the weekend, Drake and Davidson expect a lot of points.
A lot of points, a lot of rushing yards. Wesley Duggar is one of my favorite backs, and he plays for Davidson. I think Drake's defense will try to be up to the test, but they won't pass. I like Davidson to win this one. The Wildcats should roll.
Troy Anthony here with your football game plan whip around for the Southern Conference. Week 13 is here, people, the last week of the regular season. But before we dive in, let's jump back to last week, a couple players that truly balled out. The SoCon Offensive Player of the Week goes to ETSU running back Quay Holmes. Holmes had a school record 255 yards rushing. He also had a career-high three touchdowns on the day. He finished with 314 all-purpose yards. In that game, he also went over 1,000 yards on the season. Good job, Quay. The Defensive Player of the Week goes to Western Carolina linebacker Jaden Pauling. Pauling had 8 tackles on the day. Not that many, right? But he also had 3 forced fumbles. Those 3 forced fumbles gives him 5 total on the season, 2 shy of the school record. Special Teams Player of the Week goes to Sanford wide receiver / kick returner Montrell Washington. With Sanford down 10-0 in the first quarter, he returned to punt 59 yards to the house to swing the momentum. From then, Sanford rolled to victory against Western Carolina. The conference champion will be decided in the final week of the regular season this weekend. Sort of. With Wofford defeating Furman last weekend, the Terriers clinched at least a share of the SoCon title. They have a tough matchup this weekend against the Citadel. The Citadel is a stout team. If they can't get the job done, they leave the door wide open for Furman. With Furman, if they win against Point University, they'll claim a stake as co-champions. It all comes down to this Saturday. What more could you expect from SoCon football? For your Week 13 football game plan Southern Conference Whip Around, I'm Troy Anthony.
It's rivalry weekend in the FCS, and one of the best rivalries that we have in our subdivision is the battle for the Chief Cattle Trophy between Northwestern State and Stephen F. Austin. Now, the statue was created in 1960 when longtime rivals decided to award the winner of the game with the trophy. Now, the two settled on a wooden statue because both schools are located in heavily forested areas of a legendary Indian chief whose tribe, the Cattle Tribe, was responsible for settling the locations that became the cities in which the universities are located in, both which are named for branches of the tribe. So Northwestern State is located in Natchitoches, Louisiana, while Stephen F. Austin is located in Nacogdoches. Now, this statue stands 7'6" tall, so it's a huge trophy, and the Northwestern State Demons have housed Chief Catto the last two years, and 4 out of the last 6 years it's been in Natchitoches, Louisiana. So big game, big time rivalry, and one of the more unique trophies in college football. Emory Hunters are the playbook, jumping back into this best bets segment to give you some of the FCS best bets of the weekend. Now, the football championship subdivision will wrap up its regular season this weekend with some pivotal games that could determine whether or not certain teams get into the playoffs. So let's start in the Patriot League, where Holy Cross is looking to clinch the Patriot League title and the automatic bid into the FCS playoffs. They are 9-point favorites against Georgetown. I trust Georgetown's defense a little bit more than that 9-point spread, so take the Hoyas and the points. In the nation's capital, Howard hosts Morgan State. The Bears are coming off a very good win against Virginia Lynchburg. Lay all those points with Morgan State. They're playing great football at the back end of the season. Bucknell travels to the Bronx to take on Fordham. Fordham's offense is outstanding. Bucknell has done a great job initially by playing some very good football as of late, but lay those points with Fordham. Trust that passing offense of the Rams. Over in the oldest rivalry in college football, Lafayette and Lehigh, the Mountain Hawks are 4-point favorites in this ball game. Lafayette still has a unique way or an outside chance at the Patriot League title. They need a lot of help, but I don't think they'll get it from the Mountain Hawks. I think the Mountain Hawks will win that ball game, so lay those points with Lehigh. South Carolina State travels to Norfolk State, and I love the way the Bulldogs are playing. They're still in the hunt for the Celebration Bowl appearance. They need some help, obviously, but they have to take care of business against the Spartans. I think they will do that. Lay the 4.5 with South Carolina State. And in the big game of the weekend, Harvard versus Yale, one of the oldest rivalries in college football, one of the more famed rivalries in college football. The Bulldogs play great defense. They're 7-point favorites. Feel comfortable having Yale cover the spread.
There is still a huge 3-way tie in the Southern Conference for first place. Central Arkansas currently leads the way with a big win, but if they're going to host a game, they're going to have to win even bigger than maybe expected against Incarnate Word.
Yeah, this is going to be a huge game because Incarnate Word is a solid football team. Maybe not what they were last year, but they definitely could be a fly in the ointment for what Central Arkansas wants to do moving forward in the playoffs. But I don't think it'll happen. I like the Bears to avoid the upset and get the win.
And what's the typical playoff formula, folks? A win plus chaos equals playoffs, and maybe that's what Sam Houston State will need this week as they take on Houston Baptist. They lost a tough one to Northwestern State last week. What are they going to have to do here in order to win this ball game?
Play great defense, because remember how we talked a lot about Houston Baptist early in the season? One of the better stories this year. They're 5-6 right now, so they have a chance to close out with the 500 record, which is a huge step in the right direction. I think they will get that opportunity. They will do a great job. I think this will be an upset win for Houston Baptist. They're throwing the football really well. Bailey Zapp is a tremendous quarterback. I like how he's played this year. I think Houston Baptist gets to win against Sam Houston State.
Meanwhile, in the SoCon, we mentioned it a little bit earlier on, the Citadel taking on Wofford. Wofford now is already in. Citadel needs to win. They had it last week against Chattanooga and blew it in the fourth quarter. Can they get that same domination and hold on this time and maybe punch a playoff berth while they're at it?
Desperation is a stinky cologne, man, and you have a desperate Citadel team coming into this ball game against Wofford, who is still playing for seeding, and seeding is always important in the FCS playoffs. They're going to be in, they're going to get seeded, but it's all about where. I like their defense. I love what the Citadel does defensively, but last week they let the cat out of the bag and allowed the Mocs back in it and lost. I think we'll see Wofford close out the season of the Citadel by pushing them out of the playoffs. I like the Terriers.
It hasn't been a pleasant season for first-year head coach Clarence McKinney at Texas Southern, as his Tigers are 0-10 on the year. Now, it hasn't been all blowout Saturday for the Tigers. They've been in a lot of ball games. Sometimes they've showed a lot of offense, sometimes great defensive battles. They even pushed Alabama A&M to overtime. But what hasn't happened for this team so far this season has been a complete game, 4 quarters. But you've seen enough to know that this team, this coach is the right guy for the job. He will get them headed in the right direction, and we'll see if Texas Southern can get their first victory of the season in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, as they take on the Golden Lions.
Meanwhile, Alcorn State going back to the SWAC title game once again. They've been the most consistent team so far in the SWAC this season, but a tougher than expected Jackson State team might give them problems here in the final week.
Yeah, they could give them problems because Jalen Jones, a former Florida Gator transfer, has done a great job at the quarterback position for Jackson State. And you also look at the receiver, D.D. Jones. I think these two are going to be what the talk is going to be for 2020 in the SWAC. So keep an eye on Jackson State moving forward and being a problem in this conference. But this weekend, they won't beat Alcorn State. I think the Braves defense will do a great job in slowing down the passing game. And offensively, they'll close out the Tigers by getting the win.
I think that the main reason to choose HBCU is for the family atmosphere. The guys are going to get the core values that their parents taught them, that their family members tried to raise them. You'll have a close-knit atmosphere. You'll actually have guys that care about you as a person. So I think that's the main reason for choosing the HBCU.
It's now time for the FCS Stats Game of the Week, and it's one of the most fiercely contested rivalries in all of Division I, the Brawl of the Wild, and boy, what a brawl it's going to be. Montana State hosting Montana. Over the last couple years, Montana State has ended the Grizzlies season. They're going to be looking for revenge, but right now it's about seeding. Both of these teams are going to be going in as a top 10 team looking for a top 4 bid. And the question is now, who wants to get that number 3 spot and maybe end up on the other side of the bracket from North Dakota State and avoid them until the championship game at Frisco?
Well, I look at the defense for both teams. I love what they're doing defensively. Both teams are great on that side of the ball. So when you have great defenses, which offense can you trust to move the football consistently against that tough defense? Because you're going to have at least 1 or 2 series a game where the defense is a little bit out of sync and your offense can have success. And I think you look at Montana and how they're doing throwing the football. Dalton Sneed, tremendous quarterback, and what he has done. They have those quick receivers that can make things happen after the catch. You get the ball out their hands quickly, and they make moves and get up the field. Now, Montana State's defense is outstanding. Sturk is a tremendous defender. He's one that's always around the field, always around the football, making plays within their front 7. So he's going to be game, and he's going to be one of those problems that they're going to have to solve in this game. But I do like Montana. I think they're finally going to get over the hump, repay Montana State for knocking them out the playoffs. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see both teams in a rematch in round 1.
That would be absolutely fantastic if we could see that. I think defensively Montana's going to dominate. Dante Olson is a standout. He's probably going to be an award finalist, if not winner of the whole thing at the end of the season. Might be a draft pick as well, so he's a guy to keep an eye on for Montana's defense and a strong linebacking core.
So who are you picking? I'm not going to let you slide out of this without a pick.
See, folks, this is where he gets me in trouble, but you know what? I like Montana, but it's going to be, I think, they call it the Brawl of the Wild for a reason. This game could end up in the 40s for both teams. I think Montana, though, just ekes it out. I think a late touchdown or a late field goal might decide this one. I don't know what the spread is on this, but I would say take the over on the over-under in this one. That'll do it for the FCS Kickoff. Don't forget, folks, to go to footballgameplan.com for all your football knowledge. And check out the FCS Opening Drive podcast, where we break down every conference every week across the FCS. He's been the czar of the playbook, Emery Hunt. I'm David Hassagen. Enjoy the final week of the regular season, and don't forget to tune in Sunday for the selection show at 12:30 on ESPNU. Enjoy it.